that point in my journey made me realise my sort of self-worth of where I was at and where I could sort of get to. My biggest value as a human is freedom, and in a capitalist society, the way that you live that freedom is by earning more money. I could hardly get my words out because I was struggling for breath because I was so nervous, but I managed to book the call in.
From Ministry of Work, welcome to Greater Manchester's Greatest Minds, the show about Greater Manchester's pioneers, entrepreneurs and visionaries, and the stories that brought their ideas to life. I'm Eddie Whittingham, and today's guest is Joe Averill, founder and managing director of Level, a commercial office search firm based right here in Manchester. Joe opens up about growing up shy, overcoming his fear of public speaking, and how he discovered a love for sales that eventually led him to founding his own business. We talk about cold calls, confidence, capitalism, and what drives him to keep pushing forward. Not for the money alone, but for freedom and time with his family.
Yeah, so originally I'm from Heath Bridge in Manchester, which is a connection between Bury and Haywood. So all my family are on my dad's side based in Haywood in the council estate from a place called Darnhill. An interesting story about sort of Darnhill, I'm not sure if you're aware, but in the sort of 60s and 70s in Collyhurst, there wasn't enough good living condition for the people in there, so they moved a lot of people from Collyhurst and other areas of Manchester into this new council estate, which was Darnhill in Haywood. So a lot of my family is still based there, but we were brought up in Heath Bridge between there, and my dad's a sparky electrician, very hardworking, so he was able to sort of provide us a really good upbringing and a good home. And yeah, we lived in Bury, so went to primary school in Bury, went to high school in Bury. Yeah, and that's sort of where I was raised.
Yeah.
over there.
What about school? What was that like for you? Did you have particularly interest in school, or did you love it, hate it?
I always remember in primary school, wasn't a massive fan. I always used to come back and say that the hours were too long. And high school, I loved mainly just more from the social aspect, in terms of playing football, meeting friends and stuff like that, but wasn't very academic. But I always found that I'd always find a way to pull through when I needed to pull through. So when the exams came up, I used to revise thoroughly. I do have, however, 100% attendance records, medals at the house, because no matter how ill I was, my mum would say, just have a banana, you'll be sound.
That'll cure it, Mum. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that well. Yeah. Just get to school, but Mum, my leg's hanging off, get to school.
Yeah, have a banana.
Class. But teaches good work ethic, right?
Yeah, 100%. And that's probably one of the best things from, there's a lot of great things about my family, but one of the best things for me personally, which I really, really appreciate, is the hard work and the work ethic. As I say, my dad did extremely long hours. My mum as well is very hard working. She's 70 years old now, and now that she's sort of gone into retirement, she's at the gym 9 till 12, 3-hour back-to-back sessions, the kettlebell sessions.
Class.
And everything else. So they've got work ethic. And that's instilled within me. Sometimes we'd come home and Dad wouldn't be there because he'd just be grafting on site and stuff like that, and he'd be getting stuck in under the floorboards. He'd come back sometimes head to toe covered in soot, etc. And yeah, that I really, really appreciate and value that, is that sort of work ethic, because not everybody has it, and it's a real good skill set to have, to want to get up in the morning, go to work, and deliver for your own family, because I've got my own wife and children now, so I want to get up in the morning and go out and work for them and provide them the best experiences in life. So to have that, which I've got from both my mum and dad, I really, really value it.
Yeah, it's massive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Did you have many sort of challenges growing up, or what were you like as a young lad?
I was into sports and stuff like that, so I used to play a lot of football, but I was painfully shy. So really painfully shy. and I still struggle to sort of shake that off now. So even, the likes of this podcast, I've turned several down in the past because I don't like the public speaking, not comfortable on, panels and stuff like that. I did one last year where my hands were sort of shaking and bouncing up and down. So that was one of the biggest challenges. And as I say, my brother's friends used to take the mick out of me saying that I didn't say my first word until I was 18 years old. So that was a battle, and I've constantly, my ambition and my drive to be successful and to get where I want to be has sort of overrided that. Yeah.
Would you say like you're an introvert or just shy?
I think I did quite a bit of work with a life coach called Josh Cheetham, probably around a year or two ago, and he helped me to become sort of more expressive and more able to regulate my emotions more. And one of the biggest things that I found was that my biggest value as a human is freedom. And in a capitalist society, the way that you live that freedom is by earning more money. And my appetite for, I don't shy away from it, from selling, earning money, but delivering for my clients and working hard is up there. That's what I want to do. I want to earn money. I want to earn lots of it, and I want to create freedom for myself. And that appetite and ambition overrides any fear of whatever else is.
I think freedom's really interesting, because I think people sometimes confuse the appetite you've got for earning money as being materialistic, but more often than not, when I speak to people, it's actually not. It's just a byproduct of, to have freedom, you need to earn decent money. It's not always, some people obviously are materialistic, but it's not always for that. It's just that freedom comes at a price generally. Yeah,
100%. And it's, when you're working hard and you're doing the long hours, early mornings, what is it for? And for me personally, it's to spend as much time as I can with my family and deliver the best experiences possible. We just recently moved house, and you can sort of say that's materialistic, but it's not. It's a better way of living for me and my family. And stuff like taking the girls on holiday and stuff like that, you just can't beat that. You can't beat it.
Yeah, special time with family is massive.
Yeah.
So obviously after school, what did you do? How does your sort of career take off? Did you go to uni? What did you
do? So I was in Bournemouth for a while. I went to a sports college in Bournemouth. I have some family down there in the middle of New Forest called Brockenhurst College, which was absolutely amazing. And then I chose a university which was halfway between the two of Manchester and Bournemouth. And I went to Bristol UWE, did business studies there, and that was one of the best times of my life. So met a load of good friends in the first year. In the second year, I lived in a house of 7 lads just off the Clifton Triangle, which was brilliant. Lots of fun times, social activities, and didn't do too well, as you can imagine, in the second year. Yeah, so I probably got a third, I think. And then in the third year, there was sort of less of us because some people went out on placement. So really knuckled down, and ended up sort of getting a 2-1 overall. And that was a good time. And we went to a hideout in Croatia, and that's where we received our results. So it was a belting occasion. Yeah,
class. Did you obviously you studied business studies? Did you know at the time you wanted to go into business, or was it just more of an interest area? Because obviously it's easy to say now you've got your own business, but was that always on the cards, do you think?
I think so, yeah. I really wanted to go into work after high school, but through pressures from my parents, mum and dad, they wanted me to, do the tick box exercise of going into college, then going into university, getting your degree, which obviously I obliged to do. And then, business is something that's always fascinated me. I was always interested in money and, working from quite a young age, whether that was sort of stacking shelves, a little bit of labouring on site in Salford Hall, not too far away from here, for Russell Construction. And I always had an interest. So even at university, I used to read a lot of books on stocks and trading. So Robbie Burns, A Naked Trader, even came across The Wolf of Wall Street before it was a film. And then I used to go on to sort of Bull and Bear, which is the stock trading platform, which you use virtual money to test how good you are at trading. So I've always had like an interest in business, and I've always sort of like been surrounded by people who are quite inspirational, that have done really well from themselves, whether that's sort of mentors or family friends, etc., which have sort of set my sights on how the other side live, essentially. And that's why I think I've got a nice balance, because I know it's not the be all and end all, and I've got a strong family with strong, family values. So I get both aspects of the family side, which is extremely important, and the balance of the money side, because that's not the be all and end all.
Yeah, one's not worth risking the other. But
exactly.
if you can achieve a balance of both, then you're in an
happy
amazing
days.
Class. Yeah. So how did the early career work out for
you? Really well, actually. I stumbled into a role with one of my best friend's family businesses called AppLearn in Manchester's first digital hub called the Sharp Project, which is just based over in Newton Heath, which you probably know well. And they asked me to come in, basically, and work for their tech business, which was a great learning lesson. The father had sold out before, successful multi-million-pound exit, and his understanding of B2B sales was sort of really strong. So as a young, early 20-year-old lad coming into work, I got such a great experience around like how a true B2B sales function works. So I was the researcher. So I'd go in and find out who the contacts were, what software they were using, what the role was. And because we were sort of still in the early days of the business, we were still sort of tweaking and refining who was the right person to speak to. Yep. So I was learning how you tailor your message differently to a CFO, to a COO. And then I would send that information in the CRM and click it into the prospecting team, the cold calling team. So I'd then listen and hear them call my leads. And we were obviously incentivized, because if they were to book a demo and then that deal was to close, then we would get that commission. So it was really bought into that process of filling the CRM process. And if you think where we are today with sort of AI that sort of does that automatically.
But that's such invaluable experience at that age, isn't it? Because you immediately appreciate how to go about prospecting, which I always say anyone can have a business idea, but the hardest bit is selling it. You can have the best business idea in the world, but if you can't sell it, you haven't got a business. Yeah. So to learn that at such a young age is massively valuable.
Yeah, it's been brilliant, and it's been fundamental for my development. So then having that research background, I was asked to jump on the phones. The CEO asked me to go and write a script, of which I'd already been writing for the last 6 months, because I was ready to go on the phone. So he just smiled when he knew that I'd already created a script, and he just sent me down into the studio downstairs to go and scrape the teeth on some calls. And I remember the first one that I did was to Nestle, and I could hardly get my words out because I was struggling for breath because I was so nervous. But I managed to book the call in for the demo for the business development team to sort of do that call then and book them in. And ever since then, that sort of gave me the confidence, because I had such a strong research background. I was able to earn the right and the trust to speak to them on the phone, on the cold call, because I knew so much information about them. Sort of sound like a stalker, but like...
No, but you're not. Yeah. Sometimes we've all been the victim of a cold call, and it's like they're clearly blagging it. But if someone has clearly done some research, same as when you get a cold outreach on an email or LinkedIn or whatever, if someone's done the research, you give them the time of day invariably. Not always, but people do, don't they?
Yeah, exactly. And it's fundamental for establishing that trust on the call, because in the first 5 seconds, if you can establish that trust, then you pave the way to have the rest of the conversation then, which is really, really important. And that's what sort of led me into the sales element. And very quickly after the cold calling, I was then put into the business development team. And others in the business development team sort of left the cold calling to the other cold calling team and left the research, of which I sort of dipped in and dipped out of the research, but I still had the cold calling. I still wanted to have that relationship from the the first piece through to jumping on the demonstration with them. So as I say, yeah, that was a brilliant learning experience, and one that has shaped my career, and one that I'm really thankful for to Mark and Andrew Barlow, yeah.
Class.
And Michael as well, actually. He was the one who sort of got me involved.
And how did you come to sort of leave there, and what was next?
So actually, this is a really interesting one. So I've got a mentor who is very wealthy, property developer in Manchester, and he's been a close family friend since day one. And I asked him to meet in Manchester in neighbourhood for a couple of drinks after work, and I got an abrupt message back saying, no, flying to Nikki Beach closing party. There's a spare seat on my private jet. Tell your boss you're leaving and be at the airport. So I sheepishly asked the CEO at the time to go on this trip, and on there was soon to be my former employers on that trip, who I met on the plane because they were going across too. And that's where I met them essentially, and I ended up becoming unhappy at my role, so I ended up taking the job a year later, and that is sort of how it happened on the day.
Quite an opportunity, quite a sliding
yeah. It was, yeah. And that mentor is somebody that I'm extremely thankful for. Has helped me sort of throughout my career, but just happened to sort of message him on the day, and he's somebody that's always supported me, and that's the person that I said that's shown me how the other half live, essentially, from being a youngster.
And that new job then, what was that doing? The same stuff again, sales?
It was, yeah. So I went into one of the biggest leasing agents in commercial property in the city centre of Manchester, and they were very focused at the time to see how they could fill some of their landlord assets, which mean that they were focused on targeting businesses in Manchester that had office leases. So this is where I developed another string to the bow, which was networking. So I went and had my first meeting, and it was a guy who owned a cleaning company, a guy called Pete Bridge Collins. And it was one that the managing director of my former employer, that he'd set up for me. I went into the meeting, and this guy was a prolific networker. He'd gone and built all these contracts from going out to different networks and stuff. So I came out of this meeting with a load of different sort of networking events to go to. And my managing director at the time gave me a big stack of business cards and said, right, off you pop. And I remember walking into the first event, and I walked straight back out just because I was so nervous and overwhelmed about going in and about speaking to people. But the pressure was on because they asked me when I got back to the office how many business cards that I'd got, and I wanted to perform, and I didn't have any business cards because I'd walked out. So I came across a book, stumbled across one, and it basically said in networking, you should go and speak to the person that's on their own, basically, as comfort, and go and strike a conversation with them. So the next one I went up to, the networking event, I found somebody that was on their own, had a chat, and then the momentum came from that conversation, bumped into another couple of people, and I came back with 4 or 5 business cards. And then the rest is sort of history from there. I was very probably renowned at the time for being out 4 or 5 times a week. And then it's sort of the poison chalice, isn't it? If you're the one with a network, you get thrown a table, fill that. And then I was at a point where I was going to the rugby games, the Sale Sharks, the football games, the cricket, tables at restaurants that were given for launch nights and stuff. And in my 20s, I was very, very, very prolific in terms of networking. That's morning breakfast events, that's evenings. And I lived in town, and I was single at the time. So I was out all the time and built a network. And at one of the events, there was a guy who spoke about himself for 45 minutes. And I used to make notes on the business cards. And I'd had a few beers, and I remember sort of waking up with a note that wasn't too pleasant on one of the business cards, which was a reminder to myself of whenever you go out to these networking events, it's all about emotional intelligence. It's not about you. It's about putting yourself in the other person's shoes, understanding what their challenges are, who they're trying to speak to, and how you can facilitate those introductions. And that really formed part of my network growth, because I was getting introduced to people not from a threatening sales angle. It was more for the fact that go and speak to Joe. He's
connect people.
Correct, yeah. And that's been really instrumental in the growth of, how can you support the person that's opposite you and take a deeper understanding of what it is they're looking to achieve, because that really gives you a strong value proposition, because the return on investment then of working with you is not just because we can save them money on the office space and time, etc. It's the fact that you get plugged into the network, and the return on investment is beyond that, essentially, which I think is a really valuable thing. And I think it's something that you've done really well here, is you've taken a really keen interest in your members, not just to sort of get them in for profit. You've actually sort of put that profit aside and put the purpose and the value forward, and built a wider proposition around their businesses that's going to support them.
And that's it. If you're purpose and value driven, initially profit comes as a natural result. Because I imagine, we'll go on to talk about your business, but a large part of the success of your business has been built upon exactly that.
Yeah, correct. It's sort of the hard yards. Everything that we do is sort of relationship driven, and that's one of the things that we've struggled with, is that sort of like repeatable sales channel, because we've got to be constantly on the forefront. But I don't think that's a bad thing, because of the compound interest of that over time stands you in good stead of the fact that you've got to do 7, 8, 9, 10 things really good, and the plates will drop, that's fine, but it's all about picking them up. And we've got a great sort of fractional COO, Sigev, who is brilliant and very good at cracking the whip when those plates are dropped. So yeah, it's that has been key.
So tell us a little bit about what you do currently, and then we'll delve into how you got into it in the first place.
Yeah, so business is called Level, and the whole concept around the business is providing a level playing field in the office market. If you look in Manchester at the minute, a lot of the business models, when you go and search for office, you go and contact a lot of the agents. Their business model is to get paid by the landlord. So sometimes it's around, getting the landlord's best interest, whether that's signing in for longer terms, higher rates, or even the heads of terms being weighted in favour to that landlord. Those businesses are trying to sort of sell the space. Whereas I'd taken inspiration from a firm in London, and I thought that in Manchester there was a lack of business models that really served the tenant. I think there was maybe one that was doing it as a 1 or 2 person business, but there was a whole market there that was sort of underserved from tenant representation, on helping these businesses search the whole office market, just not a select few options, and be with them every step of the way, very much like a personal concierge service and their property partner through the end-to-end journey, because it's such a minefield. Serviced offices, managed offices, leased offices, contacting multiple agents and dealing with 15, 20 agents, all of which are trying to sell you space whilst you're trying to do your day job or run your business, whoever's got the project. And there's a reason why sort of property agents do exist, because it is quite technical, particularly on the lease side, of getting through that process. So we set up, as I say, Level to solely represent tenants, and we guide them through the end-to-end process. Everything from helping them on the brief, challenging them, saying, do you actually need that much office space? Can you go into buildings that have wider level of amenity on the ground floor in terms of extra meeting rooms, breakout spaces, auditoriums, event spaces, all that type of thing? Looking at things from inclusivity point of view, do you need the building to be DDA compliant, disabled access? Do you need prayer rooms in there for your team so that they don't have to be going 30, 40 minutes across town there and back? And taking all of that information in, ESG, sustainability credentials, and we'll then formulate that brief and go out to all their agents and keep their identity confidential, essentially. Smart. Because if they go out in the market blind and they contact one of the agents, and a lot of the times they have obligations to report to their landlord clients. So confidentiality is a big pillar of our business, where we go out to the market but keep their identity confidential on the search, so nobody knows that they're looking for office space.
Yeah, because presumably there's some obviously it'll be a lot of different businesses across the board, but some of these businesses are big household names out there, right?
Yeah, 100%. And that's us. We've got like a huge underdog mentality. We're up there against some of the biggest firms in the world, CBRE, JLL, Savills, some great businesses in the market. So for us, our proposition really sort of sets us apart. And we've now seen in a short space of time that we're starting to get real success and traction in the market across both serviced offices and leased offices. We've just advised FTSE 250 firm moonpig.com, which is great for the business at the size it is. And if we're doing that now, then it holds a real sort of motivation for the team of what we can be doing in the near future.
So how did you go from obviously your sales role to thinking, I've got this idea? Where did that idea come from?
I think it was probably being in the market previously and seeing across the board, across all the agents, and the term that kept on coming up for me was sort of conflict in terms of like, and seeing in press releases sometimes where businesses might be advising both parties or on a building essentially. And then that's when I saw what they were doing in London, and being completely open and honest, there was a business in there called Contour that were doing a great job in London, and I took sort of inspiration from them and had a real understanding from being in the market why they'd set up and done what they'd done basically. And then being around entrepreneurial people, that's one of the best things that I love around my role. At the time, I was walking with CEOs, directors. My former employer was, extremely entrepreneurial. So being around those people sort of inspire that entrepreneurship. It's
almost inevitable if you spend time with those people, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And that freedom that you have of creating your own thing and being the master of your own destiny, I suppose, and calling the shots of this is how I'd like my brand to look, and this is the strategy I want to put in place, and just that freedom, I suppose, to go and do whatever it is that you want to do.
And that moment when you're sort of still employed, but you've got this idea burning in the back of your mind, what was the trigger for you to go, oh, fuck it, I've got to do it?
I think I felt there was a guy in Manchester at the time, telecom business, and as I mentioned, confidence hasn't always been my strong point. And he offered me a salary which was sort of 2.5 times of what I was on at the time, which I was like,
should probably take
yeah,
that.
yeah. And then I thought to myself, wow, it made me that point in my journey made me realize my sort of self-worth of where I was at and where I could sort of get to. And I felt like it was the right time where if I was to go to another business, I probably wouldn't be as happy, because I had everything at that former business in terms of, the networking opportunities. I had a great time, and I still miss working with some of the team now, in particular, Andrew Cowell. So I really miss those times, and I thought, if I'm going to go to and do something, I want to go and do something on my own. I felt probably that I'd reached the pinnacle of employed life essentially, and it was time for me to go and do something. I felt like I had the capability to do so, the work ethic, and the opportunity with that work ethic to keep on going, building a network and a good value proposition essentially. Even though I did start out at first with a route to market consultancy. Okay. After I left the company. So that route to market consultancy was helping other businesses with their sales and marketing strategy, but I had the same frustrations with that as I did being employed. So that's when I thought, right, I'm going to go and do it for myself now and put that strategy for me.
And apply it to yourself.
Yeah.
And what's some of the dreams for the business? Where would you like to take it?
It's a good question. And it's something that I battle with constantly, because there's sort of two sides, and I sort of like listen intently to like what's happening, and I suppose you could say, if it's not too cringy, like in a spiritual way, of what like the universe is trying to show you.
Yeah.
And every time I go and try and scale or something like that, it's sort of like I feel like I get sort of knocked back, and I've tried it a couple of times and it's not the right route, it's not the right person to come into the business. But I'm really happy and content with the team at the minute in terms of the operations, and that patience of taking the right person on has stood us in good stead, particularly with sort of the wave of AI solutions that are coming on now. So at the minute, we still have that ambition to keep on driving and growing the business and scaling the business. We're just sort of waiting for the right person and the right structure. As mentioned, we've really struggled with a repeatable sales channel at the minute. We've tried email marketing, we've tried a plethora of different things, but with it being a relationship business, it's all about the people. So the next person that sort of comes into our dynamic and our environment has to be sort of that right person. And I don't think you should be in a massive rush for that, of going searching for it. I think sometimes if you're in a luxurious position like we are, which is meeting businesses all the time, meeting people at networking events, those opportunities can come, and you get to spot that sort of talent in action and sort of build that rapport with them over a certain amount of time. And that's what happened with Sam, who was the first sort of hire for the business. It came about naturally, got a really good gut feel about him and brought him into the business, and heard he was phenomenal as well, and got that impression. As we go, we might have to put some more sort of procedure and processes in around hiring other than gut feel. But at the minute, it's
although interesting fact, the only time I ever went against gut feel and did it the official way was the only time I really made a mistake hiring.
Really?
True, yeah.
Really?
Very strange. I was like, I'm going to definitely just go through the proper HR process. Went through it all and ended up, and kind of knew, I was like, I'm not 100% sure this guy's right, but he ticked all the boxes. He had the highest scores on all the different assessments we'd done, and he was a knobhead. So sometimes there's a reason that your gut's there. I think it's like intuition. It's also lived experience telling you, why you should hire him or not.
Yeah. Fully agreed. No, I agree with you on that, 100%.
And it's interesting as well. Obviously, you've got a young family, you're married, and there's that balance in there between trying to build something, trying to build a Goliath whilst maintaining that balance. I think you're one of the people who really gets that and is proud to be family orientated, like family first almost.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you've got to invest time in your family and your friends. You don't know what's around the corner. You can spend all your time working, etc., and stuff like that, but I don't think it's any way to live. I mean, myself personally, I still work extremely hard. When the kids are in bed, I'll be doing the emails and stuff like that. I still get told off the wife now to put the phone away and try and watch a film, and I do struggle to switch off. But family and friends are absolutely everything, and you should work hard, but you should always allot that time for your friends and family, 100%, whether it's weekends, whether it's times at evenings. It's irreplaceable.
That was Joe Averill, founder and managing director of Level. Thanks so much for listening to the show this week, and please do make sure to click the follow button on your podcast app so you never miss an episode. And don't forget to check out Ministry of Work, where you can also sign up for a free trial day. This episode was produced, recorded and edited right here at Ministry of Work, with a special thanks to our studio manager Dan Brown, and of course to you for listening. I'm Eddie Whittingham, and this has been Greater Manchester's Greatest Minds.